When you play the Game of Thrones, you
Subscribe and like.
or you die. There is no middle ground.
All right, hello YouTube. Welcome back to the Grease Comedy channel. Today's video, we're going to be doing a Jon Snow Winds of Winter prediction video, but it's going to be a little bit different. In the past, I've done videos where it's kind of just my own opinions. It's me talking about my own predictions and all of that. And in today's video, and I kind of want to do this going forward a little bit because I kind of like the style. I'm taking my stream style, which is, you know, putting out a Q&A or putting out a little thing like, what do you guys want to talk about? And so this video will be my own thoughts. It'll also be mixed in with your guys' own ideas. So again, you know, if you want to be a part of these videos, if you have something you would like to say when it gets to maybe your favorite character or whatnot, you know, make sure you're following my Instagram, which will be linked in the description. And also, it is in the channel page because I put out a notification for those, a story when I do those. And then also make sure you're just subscribed to the channel because I put out a channel community post, so you don't want to miss that. But let's get into it. So I broke this video into a couple sections because a lot of you guys had similar ideas or similar questions or topics that you wanted me to talk about. So we're going to go through Jon's resurrection, everything that's going to happen there. What could Jon be experiencing, you know, as he's dead, if we do get a POV of him while he actually, you know, is not alive, going through kind of what are the after effects, you know, what is going to happen to Jon when he comes back? How will this experience change him as a fundamental character? Then we'll go from, okay, where does Jon go now in the plot? I will say you guys had a lot more questions about Jon as a character, not really where the plot is going to take Jon, but we will get to that a little bit later in this video. But where will Jon go? What is he going to do with the northern plot? What will be his significance be? And then we'll kind of talk a little bit about the end game for Jon and where his story will end up by the end. So let's get into it. The first comment we have is from Ewio91. Hopefully I said that right. And they said, Jon resurrected by Lady Stoneheart. So to me personally, I don't think that's going to happen, just based upon the fact is that we look at where Lady Stoneheart is, and I'm going to kind of handle the entire Stoneheart with Jon Snow thing right here since it's mentioned, but I don't think it's going to happen. There's just so many things that have to happen. Jon Snow can't just be dead for majority of this book, which is what you'd have to be, right? Catelyn or Lady Stoneheart has their own plot going on right now with everything with this Revenge Red Wedding, with the Riverlands, with taking back River Run. There's so much there already that it would take a while before we saw anything like this happen. So I don't think it would happen. To me, it just doesn't really make much sense given the timeline. The best I think you could hope for, if you're hoping for some sort of Stoneheart and Jon interaction, is that Stoneheart is actually still alive by the end of this book and is actually the one to give Jon Robb's crown. Maybe that's what happens. It kind of feels like maybe their relationship could come full circle. I don't predict that. I don't think it's going to happen. I think Stoneheart's basically plot line will end with Arya. I think Arya will be that person to kind of kill her mother. But let's move on. If Jon Snow wargs a direwolf and gets resurrected, does that make him Werewolf Jesus? And that was from JTMaz19, who has another question or statement after this. But yes, it does. So Sterling, I think, brings up an interesting point. So in these Jon chapters, given when he's dead, and this is something we're going to talk about a little bit as well with Maz's question and or statement, is that Jon being inside of Ghost, which is what I think we all think he's doing right now, he's basically warged inside, similar to the theory that Robb warged into Greywind. Will we see some chapters where we're inside of Ghost, right, through Jon? That could be really interesting. And I don't think so, right? I am someone that really prefers not having any Jon. And if he does come back, then maybe we have a Jon chapters there. For me personally, I'm a big fan, and we're going to talk about this in the After Effects section, of Jon really actually not coming back as a POV at all, and just seeing Jon through others' POV. We actually had this kind of set up in two different ways, with A Feast for Crows giving us this look into Jon from Samwell's perspective. Jon is kind of being this person that is making a lot of interesting decisions, and we're seeing it through Sam, who's trying to rationalize why Jon's making these decisions. I really like that. And then you also have the introduction of Mel, who could kind of take over as our POV and at the wall for now. I'm not saying permanently, but I'm saying until we meet up with characters like Davos and other POVs like Bran, who could take over that role. So to me, it would be really interesting if we did see some through Jon while he is, you know, presumably dead. I just don't think it's going to happen personally, but that's going to also get us to Maz's next question. George R.R. Martin loves his internal struggle and growth. What if, while Jon is dead, his disembodied consciousness goes on a spiritual journey? It could be flashbacks on his life, or his spirit could get snatched by the werewolves and go to past events. Now, this is interesting because now we know that possibly the Three-Eyed Crow or Bloodraven himself, if they are not the same entity, could possibly be influencing Jon's decisions, or could be influencing events going on with Jon. So it would make a lot of sense that we would see some of that manipulation going on while Jon is in this state of death, or having just maybe his conscious and this free-flowing state. Would that be interesting? It would. I think it would provide some interesting thoughts for Jon, for us, the audience, and to motivate his character forward. Maybe we can get some stuff on the others that happened in the past. All of this could really be great for Jon's character. But what I'm going to take one step forward from this, Maz, again, going with my idea that maybe we won't even see Jon, or specifically, I don't think we'll see Jon before he gets resurrected. What if this all happens off screen, right? And so we're with a character like Mel, or with a character like Davos, and Jon has all of this. He's a changed individual. And we find out very slowly what has been occurring with Jon, that Jon is this character that when he was dead, he saw some things, right? He fundamentally has changed on his ideas and who he is as a person, plus everything that happened and how he died. I don't personally think we'll get something where we actually see it in a POV chapter, though. Emily, or That Dangerous Wolf, says, I 100% believe he will come back with white hair for several reasons. And she said she would elaborate if, you know, I wanted, which if you want to, you know, tell me more about this in the video comments, you can. For me personally, I don't actually mind this theory. I mean, I'm someone that is more of a traditionalist on theories, so take that as you will, but I like this idea. We know that Jon could possibly be a Targaryen, so this could be, you know, Jon. Nice symbolism to the starting of Jon's arc as maybe a Targaryen. Also, it makes sense given the point of he's going to come back almost as maybe not a white, because he warged into Ghost, is what we think anyway, but him coming back, and it really is a defining physical feature on how he's changed outside of also the stab wounds, would be really interesting. Now, I'm not sure it would add a ton to the story outside of just changing his physical appearance, what he would personally look like. You could also point to the idea that, okay, Ghost is white, so maybe being in Ghost for that long had actually physical change to Jon's body. I'm not sure. I would love to hear your thoughts on that, Emily. I don't know a ton about the reasoning behind why that would happen, but it is an interesting idea. But let's get to, so again, for me personally, Jon is going to come back because there's going to be some sort of magic, some sort of sacrifice that happens. That's usually how all of this stuff works. And Mel has already been presented at this as a POV character at the wall. I think personally, given that George has said Shireen will be burned, we don't know how or why, the circumstances of why she's being burned, but I find it likely that Mel ends up burning Shireen without Stannis' consent and all of that. She's going to hear the rumors that Stannis may have died and all of these things, and I think that she is the one that burned Shireen, but it has a different effect. It helps actually bring back Jon from the dead, and that is what's going to be the big impact, and that'll kind of get us to the after effects. So how is Jon going to change as a character? What fundamentally will be different? And that's going to get us into some of the next questions or topics. Edwin Brown 7179 says, we see that with other characters who are resurrected, the last thing they were experiencing plays a huge part in their motivation / temperament. For example, Beric / Catelyn, with Jon being stabbed and presumed dead in such a violent and traumatic way, how will this affect his personality and motivations going forward? He was going south to save a family member. Will his desire to kill Boltons and protect his family be even more of a driving factor now? I always kind of wanted Jon to go on a rampage against the conspirators and hunt them through the Nightfort. So, Edwin, I'll get to the second half of your question because there's someone that asked a very similar question to you. That'll be in another section, but thank you for that part of it as well as the first half. But let's talk about the character of Jon when he comes back. Now, the only difference that I will say here is that Catelyn and Beric presumably both just came back. Their conscience was not transferred to something else. We don't know how big of a factor that is going to be, because given that Jon is still within Ghost, we don't know how much of his character is going to be changed. It is a bit of a different circumstance, so we don't know if it's going to play out the same or it's going to be different. Now, for me personally, even if you look at that and you go, okay, the death stuff, think about the way Jon died. Jon died because he was betrayed by his brothers, the people, again, that you consider family when you go into the Night's Watch. This is all you have. And he was betrayed to the point where they killed him. Now, it was a very emotional experience for a lot of them. A lot of them are literally in tears killing Jon. But that's something that's going to change a man. It's going to make Jon really untrusting. He is going to be someone that I would actually think could be not at a Cersei level, but almost down the same rabbit hole where he's struggling to trust anyone. He is someone that is going to feel bitterness, hatred, because of Jon in his own mind. Again, his rationalization is, I was trying to save these people. Think about Tyrion, right? How he saved everyone with the Blackwater strategy in his defense. That's how Jon's going to feel. There is going to be that anger, but there's also going to be something else. Jon is going to be feeling almost at a loss for what his purpose is. As Jon is someone that has given his life at this point to trying to repair the wall, the whole world, for this threat of the others, and that got him killed. What is his purpose now? And I really like that idea that he could see his purpose now as being, I need to save my family. It's more personal now. I'm going to finally be a bit more selfish and stop caring about protecting everyone. I'm going to protect what matters to me. I'm going to protect Arya. I'm going to protect my family. And I think that will make a lot of sense. And we'll talk about that when we go into where does Jon go after this. But Jon is going to be a changed individual. He is not going to be the same character, regardless of how the actual process of bringing him back changes him. Him just directly will change as a character. What comes after death is something that Jon is going to really be affected by, right? And so I think a lot of that's going to go into it. But even this aspect of how long will Jon be inside Ghost? Will Jon's more of his animalistic traits come out, right? We have this whole idea that you don't want to stay in your wolves for too long, or you start to become more like a wolf. That's going to be something very key for Jon when he comes back. So I really love this idea. I think it's one of the most fascinating elements that George is going to be able to play with. And what's even more interesting is that if we're not in Jon's head, our characters are going to have to figure out who Jon is. Why? Who is he as a person now? That would be even more, because we'd be able to, this would be a character study on Jon, but not through Jon's head. We wouldn't be given all the information right away. That's a very fascinating plot line. But moving on. So band account 540 has 2 comments here, but it also ties really well into Lumbo Mukaka 7948. But band account says, like other characters who have been killed and resurrected, Jon will come back drastically different and will no longer be a POV character. So you are kind of on board with my idea of this idea of Jon not coming back as a POV, right? For me, I've talked about it. We don't need Jon as a POV. We have plenty of characters in the North that kind of fill that role, especially Davos specifically. And so we don't particularly need Jon. And I actually find that just seeing Jon through other characters would be far more interesting than Jon as a POV, his actual self. But I also agree, like we just talked about, Jon is going to be drastically different. But Lumbo says, I just want to see Jon go full wolf mode like the Kings of Winter. And this is pretty much the exact same thing. Band account 540 says, I'm hoping to see a more cold-hearted and ruthless Jon Snow that's more reminiscent of Winter Kings of old. I want to see him go full Theon Stark on some motherfuckers. Yeah, I think Jon will have that aspect of him, right? I think he will want revenge. Think about all the people that have done him wrong, the Boltons, whether that's some of these Night Watchmen, which they will have repercussions when Jon comes back. I think all of that is going to be present. So I definitely think we could, to a degree, see that. I don't know if he's going to go completely, Lady Stoneheart. I kind of doubt that, but I do think it's interesting. So that kind of leads us to the next part of this, the next section. Where does Jon go after this? So Jon's been revived and he wants to go south. Well, what does he do? And what is the timing going to look like? Ivan Blue Cool asks, will Jon continue with his plan to fight the Boltons after his backstabbing? And yes, initially, I think that's going to be the plan. I think the only thing that's going to be different is that by the time he gets there, I think Stannis will either be full-on sieging and about to take Winterfell, or have taken Winterfell by the time Jon gets there. So I don't actually think Jon will be involved in anything like a Battle of the Bastards like on the show. I think that will be actually just a whole Stannis plot itself. The next question, all for Jon, so we're going to skip a little bit here because there's not a lot of bridge questions in the Winterfell plot for Jon, but yeah, we'll continue. All for Jon asks, will Jon and Dany have a similar relationship in the show? So we're going to take this actually there's a couple questions here, so I'm going to take this in parts. I don't know if Jon and Dany will have a similar relationship in the show. I kind of hope that they don't have this like love relationship. The show kind of turned me off from that idea. I think an alliance is definitely possible. I think will happen given when Dany comes over. I think the North will already have been invaded by the others. I think an alliance between the two just makes sense. But I do think, right, there probably is a decent possibility that does happen. I just don't really want it to happen. Next question we have, will Aegon/Fagon factor or take the role of Jon in the show? And does Jon fight against the Boltons with Stannis? Okay, so two questions here, but Aegon/Fagon, I don't think will take the full role of Jon. I think the idea we saw with the aspect of Aegon and the show missed was Dany having this other, again, person that is a Targaryen, that has a better claim than her. How does Dany deal with that issue? And that's something that I think is going to be more present with Aegon's storyline than it will be whenever Jon gets revealed that he is Rhaegar and Lyanna's. So again, I don't think that's going to be necessarily put onto Jon as it will just, I think that will be more focused on an Aegon's plot line. And I think the whole idea here is going to be Aegon is someone that is actively going for the throne, whereas Jon does not. He doesn't want those things. And so Dany, I don't think, will be really worried about Jon, at least initially anyway. She's going to be focused on Fagon. And I think the real question you have with Aegon or Fagon is, will he help with the situation with the others? And I would tend to believe he would. It's just the question is, and this is the biggest thing timeline-wise, what gets finished first? Aegon and Dany's conflict or the conflict with the others? Which one of those is finished first matters a lot. Also, I already answered this part of it, but does Jon fight against the Boltons with Stannis? I think Stannis will have already taken care of the Boltons by that point, but I do think he will end up marching that way. And again, I agree with your second half of it, or does Jon come back during the aftermath? I think he will come back during the aftermath. But that'll lead us to Big Hornet 700. With Jon having a lot of thematic and potential family relationships to a lot of the special swords of Westeros, which one do you want him to use for the rest of the story? I just remember seeing a comment about someone wanting Jon to use Dawn. Personally, I'm fine with him keeping Longclaw. So a lot of people believe that Dawn is Lightbringer, and that would fit with Jon being Azor Ahai. Personally, I'm with you on this. I kind of want him to just keep Longclaw. Now, something I would be really interested in is if Jon instead wielded Dark Sister. Since Dark Sister is a Targaryen sword, it would fit with Jon's parentage. It would also fit with another interesting idea, because if Jon does ally with Dany, ends up being, you know, maybe one of her advisors or maybe even more, and goes against Aegon, and what if Aegon gets the sword Blackfire? You would have, again, that nice parallel of one side having Dark Sister, one side having Blackfire. I really would like that idea. Personally, I'm pretty cool with either Longclaw or Dark Sister, though, for me personally. I don't know about Dawn. I don't know if that one's going to happen. But that'll kind of get us into the end game, as I have two questions about Jon and his end stuff going on. The first one is, will Jon be king? So I could see Jon being king of the North in the short term. But if you're talking about the end of the story, no, Jon will not be the king. It's just too easy. It's the easy answer. And I do see that there's a situation where Jon becomes king, and it's kind of a bittersweet ending, because for Jon, the character, he doesn't want to be king, right? He's already tried his hand at ruling with the Night's Watch, and it didn't go well. And it's very stressful. It can be very depressing. It can be not very enjoyable. For Jon as a character, it would not be a good end. because Jon would not want that. But for us, the readers, I think we would be pretty happy with Jon being king. So I personally don't think that's going to happen personally. And that came from Jeff McMurray 9856. And the last thing we have to talk about is Better Call and then BCS. So Better Call Saul. Good show. How do you see Jon's character arc ending? Personally, I see Jon's character arc ending in a situation where he's almost this broken man, where he's gone through so much warfare, gone through betrayals, come back from death, and he's a character that, whereas he's gonna get, I kind of like the show ending where he kind of is someone that just gets to live his life, right, north of the wall, or, you know, maybe that's just him being left alone. I kind of like the ending because it's somewhat bittersweet, because it's like Jon didn't, you know, he didn't become Lord of Winterfell. He isn't king, but it's a nice ending for Jon, but it's also, you note that Jon is a broken character. So for instance, how I talked about with Jon being king, it would be a bittersweet ending for Jon, the character. It would kind of be a bittersweet ending for Jon as well, because he's a character that's gone through so much that he's a broken man. He is someone that is going to have to think on for the rest of his life things that happened, right? You know, his, you know, tragic relationship with Ygritte, his betrayal by the Night's Watchmen, the people that he's gonna watch probably die during the conflict with the others, and all that happens there. I think by the end of the story, Jon is this character that, again, like I've said multiple times, is broken. But let me know what you guys think about this video. If you guys like the new style, let me know. If you guys want me to go back to where it's just kind of my own opinions, let me know as well. And I'll see you guys all in the next video. Bye, guys.